It's the same process, but you have to solve for y first.
Yeah, I will, just a second. Will, head back to your seat, please, to take notes. Okay, so let's look at 10. So, as I look at these ones, you should be able to notice right off the bat, they are not solved for y. So what issue I have with this, what form are they in? What form is 10 in? Well, we talked about it Tuesday. ax plus by equals c, which is called what form? Standard. So 10 and 11 and a few other ones are in standard form. The issue with standard form is you can't just look at it and find the slope and y-intercept. So what I need to do is I need to get it in y equals mx plus b form first. Solve for y, just like we did on the warm-up. So if I look at 10, what would I do first to solve for y? Minus x, just like on the warm-up. So we have to do this first before you can just look at it and tell me the slope and y-intercept. 2y equals 4 minus x. Now how do I solve for y? Divide by 2. So y equals, go through and divide by 2. Don't overthink this. 4 divided by 2? Negative 1 divided by 2. Negative 1 half x. This is why I cared so much about seeing that number in front of x. Because when we go to graph it, like we're going to do right now, you want to see what the slope is. So you want to see what number's in front of x. So always put the fraction in front. Now the second step, it's y equals. So the second step is to find your y-intercept. What is my y-intercept? 2. It is the number not with the x, which is a positive 2. So don't think first and second. It's not always the second number. It's the number not with the x. So the y-intercept is 2. How do I graph a y-intercept of 2? Up 2, put a point. My slope is what? Negative 1 half. Okay, so a couple options. From your y-intercept, what's one option to get in the next point? Up 1 to the left 2. If I go up, that's a positive 1, so I need to go negative 2, left 2 to get the negative in. I could also do what? Down 1, right 2. My slope is negative, so we know from earlier this week my line should be going downhill, which it is, and then draw your line. So it's the same. We're kind of combining warm-ups with what we just did on the examples previously, where you have to solve for y and then find the slope and y-intercepts. Okay, let's look at a couple more of these. Yeah, we can look at 11. Yeah.
11 because it doesn't go on the graph right.
Okay, let's look at 11. If I look at 11, I need to solve for y. It's in standard form. I need to solve for y first. So if I solve for y, first thing I would do is what? 11. Minus 3x. Yep, you kind of follow the same pattern. Get rid of the one furthest away. So minus 3x. I'll be left with what? Equals negative 6 minus 3x. Good. Just write it down. You guys can all do this. Is y by itself? No. So I need to divide by negative 2. So y equals, the left side it will cancel. If I divide by negative 2, go through. Negative 6 divided by negative 2. Well, what's negative 6 divided by negative 2? 3. Positive 3, because they're both negative. And then negative 3 divided by negative 2. Can I divide it out? No. So leave it a fraction, and it's what? Positive, because it's a negative over a negative. So positive 3 over 2x. That's why I want to see the fraction, because that is helpful when you do rise over run. You want to see the fraction in front, 3 over 2. Any questions on that? It's like what we did Tuesday on the warm-up. Find your y-intercept. You have to have a starting point. So find your y-intercept. What's the y-intercept? 3. So I'll put a point on the y-axis at 3. You guys can do this. Don't make this stuff harder than it is. We're counting numbers. We're dividing. You can do all this stuff. My slope is what? Positive 3 over 2. So common sense tells me if my slope is positive, my graph should be doing what? going up. So as I do rise over run, you have to start at your y-intercept. I can't go up 3, so I can go down 3, left 2. My line still needs to be going up. So if I go down 3, that's a negative. Left 2 is a negative. So those two negatives will make it a positive. Plus my line is going uphill. So there is your line. You really only need 2 points. If you draw more, that's fine, but you really only need 2. Okay. Any questions on that one? Okay, these are tricky. Let's look at one more of these. There's a lot on the back. If I look at one more of these, let's go ahead and look at any of these that look particularly. How about
16.
Which one? 16? Okay. We can look at 16. Let's look at 16. If I look at 16, let's solve for y. What do I do first? Minus x. Minus x. Good. You guys are getting this. Okay. So 3y equals, we're just minusing x. So just put negative 3 minus x. What do I do next? Divide by 3. So y equals negative 3 divided by 3. And then negative x over 3. So that's a negative 1 over 3, which is just what? No, negative 1 over 3.
1/3.
1/3. Yep, put your fraction. 1 over 3 is just a third. So negative 1/3 x. Slope. Or sorry, y-intercept first. Sorry, y-intercept. Negative 1. The number not with the x, so negative 1. So let's graph negative 1 first. How do I graph a y-intercept of negative 1? Down 1. Good. My slope, negative 1/3. Starting at the y-intercept, how do I get my next point? Down 1, right 3. It's going downhill because my slope is negative. Or I could also go, how can I get another point? Instead of down 1, right 3, I can go up 1, left 3. And then draw your line. Make sure my slope is negative, so my line should be going downhill. Good. Okay, we're just going to look at the next section real quick. It's easy. Let's flip it to the next page. Sorry. We're going to look at the next section. These don't really take a whole lot of work. So what you're going to do first, if I give you a graph, write the linear equation if I give you a graph, so we're going backwards. So now I'm going to give you the graphs of lines, and you need to write the linear equation. So first step you need to do is you need to identify the slope and the y-intercepts. Okay? There's not going to be a whole lot of work with these. You just have to remember, okay, how do I find the slope? How do I find the y-intercepts? The next thing is you're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So once you find the slope, and once you find the y-intercept, you're just going to plug it in like we did Tuesday. So don't make these harder. There's not a whole lot of work involved with these. Let's find the y-intercept first. That's the easiest to find. So as I look at number 1, what is the y-intercept? Remember, that is the point where it crosses the y-axis. Where does this cross the y-axis? Negative 3, right there. So that is my b value, my y-intercept. Don't make it harder than it is. Where does the line cross the y-axis? That's my slope. Okay. That's my y-intercept. My slope. Pick another point, which they already have kind of right here. Pick a point that hits nicely. So I'm going to pick right there. We did this on Monday. Start with your left point and do rise over run. I go up how many? 3, right? 1. So 3 over 1. It's positive because my line is going uphill. 3 over 1 is just what? 3. And then once you have m and b, you just plug them into your equation. So it's going to be y equals 3x minus 3. mx plus b. mx plus b. 3x minus 3. Plug it in. Okay, let's look at one like 4 real quick. If I look at 4, let's find the y-intercept first. What's the y-intercept for this?
1.
1. It crosses at 1 right there, so my y-intercept is 1. My slope, well, choose another point where it hits nicely, which is right there. First of all, I know my slope's going to be what just by looking at it?
Negative.
Negative. It's going down. So start with the left point. I go down. How many? 1, 2, 3. So negative 3 because I go down 3 and then I go right 1. So negative 3 over 1, which is negative 3. So if I plug this in to y equals mx plus b, it's going to look like what?
Y equals negative 3.
3x plus 1. You don't need to put negative 3 over 1. So y equals negative 3x plus 1. Okay, let's look at one like... let's look at... let's look at one like, I don't know. Let's look at one like 7. So flip it to the back. Let's look at 7 real quick. If I look at 7, we'll do one more and then I'll let you set the homework. Okay, the y-intercept is usually easiest to find first. What's the y-intercept? Where does this line cross the y-axis? Right there at negative 3. So my y-intercept is negative 3. Guys, stay with me, please. We're almost done. My slope. Pick 2 points, which that looks like they all have marked for you. Start with your left point and count how many. First of all, my slope is going to be what just by looking at it? Positive. Start with your left point. I go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So I go up 4. So it's a positive 4. Over 1, 2, 3, 4. And I go right 4. So it's a positive 4. 4 over 4 is 1. So as I plug it into my equation, it's going to be y equals 1x, which we just don't really put there. So y equals x, sorry, Justice, y equals x what? Minus 3. Good, we're plugging it in. You guys can do this. Okay? So, I would not count off, but you don't really need it there. Okay? So go ahead and you have about 25 minutes to finish the